Let me tell you that we are transmitting live from our Instagram account on that camera and for our Facebook account on that other camera. So maybe I will be talking to both cameras at the same time, and it's going to be a little weird, but the idea is to reach the largest amount of followers, friends, and customers to be sure that everybody will be available, that the connection and the content will be available for everybody after the tasting finish. So we are starting with the Anosero Tempranillo 2018, as I said before. This is the varietal that it's very important for us. Argentina is not known for Tempranillos, but the Tempranillos are the fifth largest varietal planted in Argentina, but it's the second most planted in La Consulta. The reason is because most of the farmers remain, the Italian farmers remain in the north growing Malbec, but nobody wants to plant on the south in a sub-appellation called El Cepillo, because it's very cold and the risk of frost is higher. So what happened is the Spaniards came later, the immigrants came later, and they fixed the problem, replacing the Malbec with Tempranillo that has a shortened ripeness period. That is the main reason why we have so much Tempranillo in the area and why it's so popular and very well adapted. The nose is very fruity. It has a lot of red fruit on the nose. And compared with our two other Bordeaux varietals, the Tempranillos are always very sweet, very approachable. They have a very beautiful live acidity, and the tannins are softer. You can perceive that the wine is more drinkable or approachable for average palates, and also much more approachable to the classic Spanish Tempranillo. So that makes this wine something very versatile in terms of food pairing, something very versatile in terms of also pricing and to choose the right moment where to enjoy this wine. This wine brings us a lot of satisfaction and success in the market, and we cannot consider ourselves as a terroir-driven winery based in La Consulta not having a Tempranillo in our portfolio. So we started with this Tempranillo, and we are going to take later about the Ovine Tempranillos that are part of this La Consulta Select 10. Okay? Perfect. Now we are going to move to the second wine, same Anosero collection. Maybe you will see better. Same vintage, 100% Malbec from 4 different sub-appellations. We have this map here. You want me to move them up there, or you want to stay there with the camera? Okay, let me bring them up. Here you have the Andes mountain range. We are watching from east to west. On the back you have Chile. You have the Pacific Ocean. The Andes is a big wall that split us from Chile, leaving the humidity in the Pacific side and creating a big desert on the Argentinian side. So La Consulta is at the foothills of the Andes. It's formed by the Tunuyán River, where we are on the right side of the Tunuyán River, and this is all the La Consulta place where you have around 4,000 hectares planted. Our winery is right there. That's why we decided to have a born and raised project from La Consulta, where 100% of the fruit is from La Consulta, fermented, aged, and bottled at the property. So here are the 17 properties from where we source the fruit. For this Anosero Malbec, we source fruit from El Cepillo, Appellation, Altamira, Lotes Barraquero here, and Chacón here. So that permits us to cover almost the whole appellation. We pick them separately, they ferment apart, and we make a single batch blend after the malolactic fermentation finish. and we bottle all the batch together. So this Anosero Malbec, it truly represents La Consulta as an appellation. I think you will find flavors from every single corner from the place, and permit us to have a very unique Malbec that it's not the classic average Malbec from Argentina. It's not as bold or muscular. It's much more elegant, nicer, and also very approachable and versatile in terms of food pairing. The fruit is a little bit darker. The mouth is richer compared with the Tempranillo, but it also has a beautiful acidity, very well balanced with very soft tannins. Okay, and now we are going to introduce you with this Anosero Cabernet Sauvignon. For Instagram here, for Facebook there. Altocedro means tall cedar or high cedar. It's a beautiful property in the middle of La Consulta. Being a very cold area, as I said at the beginning, the Tempranillos and the Malbecs are the most well adapted, while the Cabs came later. Nobody want to have a Cabernet Sauvignon vineyard there because the high risk of frost. But many years later, the Cab, maybe thanks to the global warming too, the Cabernet Sauvignon start getting more and more popular, and we really want to have a cool climate Cabernet Sauvignon. We love Cab. Argentina is well known or popular in the market for the Malbecs, but Argentina is a Cab-driven country like yours, so we have a lot of expertise farming Cab. There is a lot of mass selection clones available, and we source the fruit from two different vineyards, one from the north, one from the south, in that part of La Consulta, and that permits us to make a very original Cabernet Sauvignon flavor that it's completely different, and you can perceive that cool climate interpretation of Cabernet Sauvignon. Has a lot of typicity. It really fills your mouth as a good Cab, but it's a little bit softer and lighter compared with a Reserva type of Cab, and has also a beautiful fresh acidity that is not common for Cabs from warmer areas here in Mendoza. So this Cab, it's very successful, especially on the American market, and I think that all the customers and people that they already know any of our wines, they will get surprised when they taste this Cab. That's the reason why it's growing and performing very well on the market. Just to finish this first part of the tasting, and I started getting nervous when the electricity shutdown came, so maybe I didn't explain properly about the Anosero concept. The Anosero starts as our own New World interpretation. Personally, we don't like the New World. We don't consider that Argentina is part of the New World, because we have here more than 150 years of modern winemaking. And we really have to take advantage of the freshness of the high altitude fruit that we get from those mountain desert, and that's the reason why the Anosero we have to develop a completely different protocol for the Anosero wines. On the farming, we promote an early picking to reach the highest amount of fruitiness on the nose, with rounder tannins and lower sugar or alcohol. It's fermented in concrete tanks, 100% native yeast, but the fermentation is very slowly, but we don't do any kind of skin maceration that permit us to have a lighter expression. We don't over extract. And later, it has a very light oak aging. We just age 1/3 of the volume in French oak, and the other 2/3 remains in concrete to keep this freshness, that very light fruitiness, and a wine that can be enjoyable immediately, even being an early or a young vintage like this one. So I think we already cover mostly the Anosero explanation. I really enjoyed to have the same type of the same style on the collection, the same pricing also, but 3 different varietals and with a lot of typicity. You really taste the Tempranillo, and it's even my Spanish colleagues, they agree that it's a very unique type of Tempranillo. The Malbec, it's a great ambassador of La Consulta. We really think that this wine, it truly represents Malbec itself, covering the whole La Consulta appellation. And the Cabernet Sauvignon is a very unique cool climate cab from this part of the country or the province. So we will be answering questions later. So maybe we can stop here with the Anosero tasting and move to the Reserva collection. But before that, we need to check how the barbecue is doing. As we said at the beginning, we didn't want to make just a boring classic tasting, and especially those that are available on the social media daily. So a part of the wines itself, and having the opportunity to share our wines, but also our culture and our tradition, we decided to make this barbecue with others. So let's go there. Let's see how the barbecue is doing, and then we are going to return to the table to continue tasting the Reserva wines, okay?
Hello.
You sale again.
Hi. Well, seems that it's doing well. Let's see later. I think it's time to turn over this, but I think the most important part is what is coming there. That is the next part of this. I'm using some of this to put some humidity on the meat. This is garlic and salted and water. And we have some chimichurri. We like the chimichurris, oregano, garlic, olive oil, vinegar, and some pepper. So one of these meat is going to have some chimichurri. It's so flavor, so it's going to be very well with the Cabernet, I think. We'll see.
Yep.
We have to do some
Pairing,
pairing, yeah, some pairing with all of this. We have many things. We have the sweetbread. The sweetbread, we boil this first 15 minutes, then it's mashed, and then we are cooking now to have very crispy,
Crunchy,
sexy.
sexy.
I hope. Well, it's all from here. So
We're going to continue grilling, but also it's a tradition here that before to start with the barbecue, we have the empanada. So apart of Ale, there is a member and founder from Vino del Sol. We have Federico here.
hi everybody.
That he's the general manager and also the agronomist of Altocedro. And he went 6 years to the college, and later he got a master's degree to start making empanadas,
Exactly.
doing live tasting. So for all the people that are thinking about being in the wine business, after you get a degree on winemaking or agronomist, you will finish making empanadas to sell a bottle of wine.
And it's a pleasure. Cheers.
So he made we call picadillo, that is the field. This is the way that we do in Mendoza. You have different type of empanadas depending from in which part. This is the empanada from Mendoza with different spices and also egg. And after he closed it, here we have the ones that we already took from the oven and we are going to enjoy.
Right, the final touch with egg, we painted.
Yep. And then to the oven, and then we have these empanadas that we are going to enjoy later as soon as we finish with the tasting. These ones are very good. Thank you, Fede. Sorry, I will be eating while I'm working. So, again, I hope you continue joining the tasting while we show you the grilling, also the empanadas, and we are going to finish the tasting with two wines from our Reserva collection. We have the La Consulta Select, we have the Reserva. There are wines apart from a different collection, from a completely different style from what we have here. La Consulta Select, it's a very unique type of blend, especially because it changes every year, every vintage. And the reason that why it changed is because it's not a blend of wine; it's a blend of grapes. So instead of making a coupage, we make an uvage. So we pick different varietals, always sourcing from the same vineyard, from the same blocks. And depending the season, depending how the ripeness is coming, we decide to pick different percentage of those varietals and putting together on the same fermentation tank. That permits us to have a very unique blend, a very unique flavor from the very beginning, and that creates a very original character and style. For this 2017 vintage, we co-ferment Malbec, Cabernet Sauvignon, Tempranillo and Syrah. And technically it's a Reserva wine because it aged 12 months in French oak. Here we still have a lot of fruit, but with a different character. It tastes like a more serious wine, and it really you can perceive the flavors of all those varietals combined with a type of oak, but very well integrated with the fruit, and on the mouth is richer compared with the Anosero, but also very well balanced wine that we can also describe as a true ambassador of La Consulta. For this wine, we did a true selection of what we consider the varietals that we were missing, a part of Malbec, because everybody at the beginning, imagine, or you remember the industry 15, 20 years ago, Argentina was everything about Malbec. But we knew as local growers that we were missing beautiful Merlot, beautiful Tempranillos, beautiful Syrah. That's why we really want to make this blend. And the result of this wine, it also helped us to put La Consulta on the map. As we described it at the beginning, here we have the La Consulta map. Again, should I? No, you can stay there, don't worry. So, with the La Consulta Select, we also cover almost the whole appellation. For the people that get into the live tasting later, this map is looking from the east to the west. Here you have the north, there you have the south, but you can have a nice picture of the size of La Consulta, where you can see the Tunuyán River and the different vineyards from where we source also the La Consulta Select blend. This wine, we can say that it's right in the middle of our portfolio. It permits us to have a Reserva wine, but with its own style. It's something that took us a few years to develop. The first vintage was 2009, and since then it's been a very successful SKU from our portfolio. Beautiful wine, very enjoyable, and we have a lot of success and supporters of this wine, because one of the questions that we will be talking later about what is coming after Malbec, I think the red blends from Argentina are going to became a very successful category. So now let's go to the next wine. The next wine is the Altocedro Reserva Old Vine Malbec. This is one of the very first wine that I started making, first vintage in 2001, and we are going to taste now the current vintage, that is the 2017. Here for Instagram, there for Facebook. Well, this wine is something very important for us. A part of being the very first wine that I started making, it's the wine that permit me to start understanding, or to have a better understanding about La Consulta. It's the wine that permit us to find fruit from the oldest vines from the appellation, and also to develop a very classic Reserva style. We consider Reserva because it's 100% old vine, fermented in concrete tanks, very low yields, and also the fermentation is different compared with the Anosero. Here we age, we wait a little bit longer for the picking moment, and later we skin macerate longer. We ferment at normal temperatures, and later it aged 18 months in French oak, so 100% of the batch. So this is a classic Reserva flavor. This is something that we can consider the most traditional Reserva style of our winemaking, and also a wine that it's very attached to the flavor, to the traditional local flavor of Argentina. It has a very dark inky color. It's very complex. The nose has a lot of violets, also red dark fruit, and on the mouth is a very rich wine, still very young, and it's a very complex type of Malbec, a lot of layers to discover, and believe me, it's a wine that aged very, very well. We've been aging and keeping this wine since the very first vintage in 2001, and even the first vintage is still showing very, very well. So we already covered the whole portfolio. We are not allowed to taste the Grand Reserva in this opportunity, but it's also a very important member of our portfolio because it's a limited production of old vine Malbec co-fermented in barrels with Semillon Blanc. So between the three Anosero, Tempranillo, Malbec and Cab, and the three Reserva wines, La Consulta Select Red Blend, the Reserva Old Vine Malbec, and the Grand Reserva Malbec Semillon, we have a complete tasting or a complete view from the whole portfolio. Now, and before to start enjoying the barbecue, we have some questions. I don't know if we are okay with the time. So it's 9:35. Let me check. Yep. So we can start with some questions. Before start answering those questions, let me thank to Vino del Sol, especially all the Vino del Sol members that organized this event. They brought a lot of customers, a lot of followers all around the country. So everybody in the company tried to put people behind that camera to have this live tasting and live grilling to feel that we are closer. Unfortunately, we are not allowed to be there, or you're not allowed to travel here. So we are developing these new tools that are permitting us to feel that at least we are closer, and are still very worried and interested to share this part of Argentina and these beautiful wines with you. So we have 3 questions, one from Nick, one from James, and one from JC. The question from Nick says, what is it about La Consulta that produces such great wines? Well, you are right there, Nick, because it's not about our winemaking. I would like to say that it's about my skills. But La Consulta is a very special, very unique corner in Mendoza. It shares the same growing conditions of high mountain desert, very poor soils, low rainfall, a lot of sun exposure, and a great temperature range between the day and night that permit the grapes to ripe very slowly, keeping the freshness of the natural acidity. So, but this is not something original. It's not exclusive from La Consulta. It's something that you will find all around the Andes, or along the Andes, from the very north provinces of Jujuy or Salta to the very bottom in Patagonia, and Rio Negro or Chubut, Neuquén, Chubut, and Rio Negro provinces. The reason why La Consulta is so special, first of all, because the Italian immigrants, did spontaneously a mass selection of great Malbec, Tempranillos, and Semillon that adapted very well. So every Italian family continued with this tradition, not raping out the vines even in the worst part of our industry crisis, and that created a lot of vineyards with a very true adapted material. That's why we don't, every time we start a new vineyard, we don't bring the vines or the plants from a nursery. We have our own nursery, or we replace every single position using runners. So we keep that material, that genetic material, apart or separately, and taking advantage of the La Consulta identity. Also, I think that the combination of those conditions, especially the altitude, La Consulta is 1100 meters, is something around 4,000 feet. It's on the ideal range where the vines get the highest efficiency in terms of phenol concentration. So one of the things that make La Consulta beautiful, that the phenols are very high concentrated, the tannins are very rich, but also the anthocyans, the color, are more concentrated than any other place in the country. Well, I hope this explanation, or brief explanation, help you, Nick, about La Consulta. The question from James is, do you have a favorite of all your wines? No, I don't. It's a very common question that is very difficult to answer, because every wine here, it deserves to be part of our portfolio. It took us a lot of effort to develop every single label. Imagine we start with just 2 labels, and now we have more than 24 labels. So every single wine went through a process of development, of understanding, and a lot of effort. So even from the less expensive wines to the most exclusive limited production wines, we are very proud of all of them. And believe me, as many of us, I'm a winemaker, I'm in this part of the industry, I work from a lot of hours to make a living, but when I return home, or I enjoy a bottle of wine from some of my colleagues, or some of my favorite wines around the world, I'm a wine lover back again, so most of the time I prefer not to drink one of our wines. I prefer to enjoy wines from around the world, from my colleagues, from my friends, that it make us feel disconnected with the effort of doing our own wines. So that was the James question. Now we go to the JC question that says, have you completed harvest, and how has the COVID situation affected the harvest process? That is a very good question. You can check on our timeline in Facebook and Instagram many videos and information that we uploaded during the top of the crisis, because we felt very weird, very insecure. We had to learn a lot of things and to implement very strict sanitary measures from the very beginning to continue harvesting. Even the COVID situation made this harvest very difficult. The harvest itself was very unusual, because last March down here in the southern hemisphere is our fall was very warm, maybe the warmest in the last 50 years. So that speed up all the ripeness, and we had the opportunity to pick all the varietals earlier, including the Cabernet Sauvignon and the Petit Verdot. So the COVID situation, combined with unusual weather conditions, made this vintage memorable for the quality, and also for the amount of new situations that we have to learn and discover. But thanks that we have a great team, very committed people, we went through the situation and we adapted very fast. We had to work harder, we have to have regular meetings every day. Even the dog that is barking, it's part of the team, so sorry about that. But all the things that we learned during the crisis permit us to finish the harvest very well, and we are handling the last fermentations, and the wines are showing beautiful. That's very important. So those are the first three questions. We have a few questions more. I don't know if you want to check how the grilling is going, or should we continue with the questions? Is everybody enjoying the tasting? Yes?
Yeah.
Okay. We started the tasting at the first part before the shutdown came with this Mexican mask. It doesn't look very serious, but we really try to catch your attention, because those live tastings normally are very boring, because you have the same ugly face of a boring winemaker talking about phenols, altitude, and farming. But we're very happy about what we are doing now, because it's the first grilling, the first barbecue, the first meeting of only 4 guys that are making everything not in a very professional way, or we try to do it as the most professional possible. Here in Mendoza it's 9:40 p.m. So we are very happy to have this tasting and grilling at the same time. So let's go there again and see how Ale is doing with the grilling.
Bring a fork, Karim.
Okay?
Take a fork.
We're not having our face mask. We already wash our hands many times, but even if we get contagious today, we can blame that we were working. Can I?
I try it, yes, please.
This is the pork belly.
Pork belly.
We call here matambre de cerdo.
I think it's...
And this is one of the reasons why we still live in Argentina. And we don't move to the United States.
Yeah. We need more people here to eat this. I don't know. Let's see how. He's going with the Gran Reserva. The Reserva. and La Consulta. I think it's Tempranillo with the pork belly, and La Consulta Select with the filet.
If you don't mind, Ale,
Yeah.
I can help you with this.
Oh, thank you so much.
So Ale thinks that this Altocedro Reserva Old Vine Malbec, it pairs very well with the filet.
Let's see. Okay, let's try this. Karim, you first.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Sorry, you are watching only.
It's tasting beautiful. Okay,
Thank you for the wine.
you're welcome. So, we have a few more questions and comments from our followers. People asking about La Consulta. We already talked why it is so distinctive compared with other places, especially about the color. They are asking, the blend was great. How did you decide on the allocation of each grape? Well, we decided at the moment of the before the harvest. We have our database, our analysis track record, and also we have the tasting of every single varietal. So that permits us to understand how the grapes are showing. If an early or a cold season like 2015 or 16, we have more Merlot and Tempranillo in the blend. In other harvests that are warmer, like 2013, or this one, for example, we have more Cabernet Sauvignon and more Petit Verdot on the blend. So that is how we normally decide it. It's tasting and checking the ripeness of every single varietal. They were also asking about the Malbecs and the Reserva Malbec at the price point. Well, it's here we have the opportunity to make a very full range of different varietals at very approachable prices. And one of the things that made Argentina famous was the quality, but also the value, and how you can find beautiful wines at very approachable prices. Well, high elevation, we already talked. Cement tanks or fermentation is something very important. We already talked about we have a gravity-fed winery, fermented in concrete tanks, 100% indigenous yeast, and also our farm is 100% sustainable, also very important for us. Outside of Malbec grape, where do you see the future of Argentina viticulture? Well, as I said before, we have many varietals. Argentina is a great producer of different type of varietals. So it's not like in Europe that you have a single appellation for a single varietal. In Argentina, in general, we are blessed being allowed to produce a very wide range of varietals, red and whites. But personally, I think that Cabernet Sauvignon, it's a must. It's a highlight from Argentina. Not only because everybody knows cabs around the world, but also because we have a long tradition of farming, making, and enjoying Cabernet Sauvignon. So we are very big here in Cab, and this is something that creates a great link, a great connection between Argentina and the United States. What is the most challenging aspect of being a winemaker? Well, to survive, to be alive and not getting divorced because we are working very late every day. But it's a beautiful lifestyle, so I don't complain. Why does I use Semillon and when it's going to, well, it's a personal question about my my relationship with Fede, but it's because it's a great chef. As I said, we have Semillon, the most well-adapted white varietal from La Consulta that we co-ferment here on the Gran Reserva. It's a beautiful, neutral, very elegant varietal and permit to fix the color to make the tannins more velvety and also to push up all the floral side of the aromas. So that's why we use Semillon and we co-ferment with Semillon. Why does the old vine taste different than the young vines? Well, as I said before, the very old vines are pre-phylloxera original rootstocks. So we have a piece of history that almost disappeared in Europe. So in Argentina, we could keep those original rootstocks apart and having the opportunity of continue farming them without any phylloxera or war that affected the production. We're very lucky because those old vines have the original true flavor that came from Europe 150 years ago. What is my approach about sustainable farming and how does it differ from my neighbors? Well, we have a lot of great producers in La Consulta. Most of them, they only source fruit from La Consulta. We are one of the few born and raised wineries in La Consulta where 100% of our fruit is from La Consulta. As we saw on the map, we run 17 different properties and well, more than 27 blocks from different varietals and type of grapes. But it's also fermented at the property, aged and bottled at the property. That makes the Altocedro wines estate fruit, 100% from La Consulta, and it's a great opportunity that permit us to build this portfolio. So the farming is very traditional. We don't use any kind of weed control. All our food is hand harvested, and we have a very traditional way of farming to keep those very old vines alive, healthy, and happy. At the end, how is the 2020 vintage looking in Mendoza, and more specifically in La Consulta? Well, as we said before, this vintage was very unique. Everything happened very fast, but we have a few wines still fermenting, but they are already showing beautiful, all of them. The Malbecs, the Tempranillos, the Syrah, the Petit Verdot, the Cabernet Sauvignon. So we're very happy. Despite the stress and the difficult situation that we have to went through during the harvest, we will, in a few years, we will remember, if we survive financially, we are going to remember this vintage as one of the best ones. So this is my opinion, and I think the wines are already proving that. So I think that we are on time. We should be closing. So let me invite Ale and Fede. I prefer to stay here because they will not need to move. So let me put my Mexican mask again. That will protect us from the virus.
Okay.
I'm with the.
You stay.
You already have a mask. So, thank you for being there. Thank you, Vino del Sol, for being our partner for more than 16 years now. Thank you for all the crazy people that is been supporting us and letting us to learn and being through this crazy path for many, many years. So we hope that things start getting normal, and if don't, you have the opportunity to watch us again or enjoy a live barbecue through Facebook or Instagram. Thank you very much and have a good night.
Thank
Good
you.
night. Salud.
Salud.
Salud.